A warm welcome to all of you. The Archdiocese of Bombay has started a small project to reach out to those who are in need, especially in the health sphere. There are so many problems during the pandemic, and we are trying to reach out in a small way. We have started a health outreach project under the guidance of Dr. Richard Pereira and Dr. Armida Fernandez. I will invite Dr. Richard Pereira to moderate this session with the panelists. He has certain questions to them. Dr. Richard Pereira is the coordinator of the Health Outreach Program. He is a periodontist with over 20 years of experience into private practice and is a consultant with Holy Family Hospital. As I said, he is also the project coordinator with the Health Outreach and Archdiocesan Initiative. So, Dr. Richard, I ask you to moderate the session and we can go ahead to make the people aware of certain facts which we want to know. So over to you, Dr. Richard.
Thank you, Bishop. It's a pleasure to be here this session. As you mentioned, the health outreach. I just want to say a line about the health outreach. This is an initiative which came about a couple of months ago under the guidance of Bishop Alvin and Dr. Armida Fernandez, who many of you may know. And the purpose of this health outreach was to work with the parishes of Mumbai in facilitating healthcare facilities to the poorest of poor and the migrants. So that's the basic vision of the health outreach. And under that aegis, we've been successful in kind of reach out to at least 10 to 12 parishes so far. And the goal is to touch the over 100 parishes in Mumbai and see that the poorest of poor healthcare needs are met. Under the health outreach, we've also decided with Bishop to do this small session to basically to answer very simple questions which our people have in this crisis at the moment. We're going through a pandemic, which is at a crisis stage, and many have a lot of questions in their mind. So to answer those questions, we have with us our doctors from the health outreach with us. And it's my privilege to introduce each of them. Dr. Ruin Mascarenhas is the senior most in this panel, and he is also the core team member of the health outreach. Dr. Ruin is a pediatrician with over 4 decades of experience. Welcome, Dr. Ruin. We have next Dr. Ashish Castellino, an ENT surgeon who practices in Bandra, Santa Cruz area. And he is actively involved in COVID care at the Holy Family Hospital. And he's working really hard. He's got over 9 years of experience and he's working hands-on at the Holy Family Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Ashish. We also have Dr. Suzanne Bosco Berkman, who is a resident surgeon at the R.N. Cooper Hospital at Vile Parle. Again, someone who has a lot of hands-on experience working with patients and who's inundated with cases at the moment. We're glad to have her on panel and share her experiences. Good evening, Dr. Suzanne, for taking time off from your schedule. And finally, on the panel is Dr. Cheryl John. Dr. Cheryl is a consultant psychiatrist who practices at Holy Spirit Hospital and at the Hiranandani Hospital. She is a strong advocate of community mental health and believes that awareness is the first step in resolving the problem. And we've invited Cheryl to give her views because mental health is another area which needs a lot of addressing during this crisis. So welcome all of you. Welcome, Cheryl. And let's dive right into this discussion, which will hopefully clear a lot of myths for our listeners. So whatever questions I have, it's an open question in a way. So if you have another point of view or you want to add your expertise, feel free to jump in at any time. So I'm going to start with a senior most panel member, Dr. Ruin, with something very basic, very cliche, which everyone probably knows, but I want to hear it from a practitioner's mouth. Is, doctor, if someone says, how do I protect myself from COVID-19? How do I just stay safe? Everything is now, reached its peak. We have new variants out there. So how do I need some additional protective measures to protect myself and stay safe? Dr. Ruin?
Okay, so to start off, if we have to protect ourselves from the enemy, we must know the enemy. So the enemy is a virus. It's a respiratory virus known as the coronavirus or the SARS-CoV-2. It enters and exits through the breathing passages. That's the nose, mouth, and maybe the eyes. Transmission is basically by coughing, sneezing, talking, singing, heavy breathing. So these are ways in which the virus goes out. That would be somebody else getting it onto you. There are two types of methods. One is the droplets, which are the large drops containing the virus. And there's something called aerosols, which are small and they contain the virus. The aerosols can linger in the air. The droplets fall in a area that's barely a meter or two from the person who's transmitting it. Aerosols will come in when there's crowding, when there's no ventilation, mainly in indoor gatherings, and they can linger for quite some time in the area. We see it in restaurants, nightclubs, offices, places of worship, bazaars. Mainly for us, it would be parties, get-togethers, marriages. We must not attend a function if we are not well, because we are going to transmit it. We must keep one thing in mind. After the parties, when we've had a good drink, we forget about distancing and masking, and that could be one of the positive factors. So how do we prevent the virus getting into us? Since the point of entry is the mouth and the nose, we would cover up that area. So masking is the most important way in which we can prevent the virus getting into us. There are different types of masks that people have heard of, but a simple thing is the cloth mask, which everybody uses, would be reasonably okay for the general population. Now with the second wave that's come in and the very high infectivity, high rate of transmission, it is suggested that using a double masking would be preferable, where we use a simple surgical mask within and we use the cloth mask on the outside. Since the aerosols float in the air and the droplets fall close by, distancing for acute droplet problem will benefit. So distancing is 3 feet to 6 feet. And what was earlier thought to be a significant transmission of surfaces is now not considered as much a cause to worry about. So masking, right now double masking, first surgical 3-ply mask and a cloth mask covering it. The N95s are best left for healthcare professionals. For the general population, a simple cloth mask. Thank you.
So what you're saying, the basics don't change. Basically, social distancing, masking, washing of hands remain the norm no matter what. I think probably the only change in this new variant now is that probably the double masking is now coming to recommendation now. Okay.
Right.
Ashish, with this new variant coming up, I mean, I've seen that, there are a lot of change in the symptoms people manifest. The norms of fever, is not kind of becoming the norm now. A lot of people without fever are becoming positive. So what are the symptoms people should actually watch for if it's not fever? And, because there's a lot of doctors prescribing, drugs randomly, tests randomly. So, how do I quarantine myself? Should I go to a hospital? What tablets should I take? These are, again, questions people have at the moment. So what is your take on that?
Yeah. So, viruses will always mutate, and we will continue to see mutations of the virus and changes in the presentation of the virus. It is important to recognize that the COVID virus also can be, present as an asymptomatic patient. That means you could not have symptoms and still be able to transmit the virus to somebody else. So there always has to be, in what we call in medical terms, a high index of suspicion. That means, you have to be alert and aware that there is always going to be a possibility of COVID. Common symptoms like, body ache, fever, cough, loss of smell are always, we are seeing regularly in our practice. But in addition to that, we're also finding patients who suddenly come with chest pain, suddenly come with weakness, of their limbs, body parts, or they come with breathlessness without any symptoms earlier. So, but they had another family member who had COVID symptoms. So it is important, to check, to be aware of the possibilities that COVID can present with everything, even loose motion. So you can have even loose motions and be COVID positive. How to go about, and whether you should kind of test early. The right way to do it is to check early. Right now in the pandemic, there are a lot of people who are scared to do the COVID test, who do want to test. And unfortunately, with the number of cases that have increased, if you do the test today, you're getting the report in 2 days. That means you're losing 2 days in the treatment of COVID. So as soon as you have a symptom which you would suspect, the first thing to do is get medical attention. See your family physician, see a MD physician, see anybody who can help you out to decide whether the test is required or not. Because if you delay, you are both compromising the quality of treatment that you can get. COVID is easier managed when treated earlier. If you delay and you are in a self-denial where you say, no, it's not COVID, and just keep treating yourself, self-medication is an absolutely bad idea in COVID. So seek medical help, get regular help after that. Don't neglect your symptoms, and that's a sure shot way of beating COVID in this pandemic.
Right. So basically what you're saying, the mantra is early detection, and that is the key. So don't wait till the disease.
Also, there is a lot of fear of going into hospitals, and people are neglecting their other health problems.
Right.
So which is, you have patients with chest pain, wondering whether they will get COVID when they go to the hospital. If you get chest pain, you are at risk of dying of a heart attack. So don't neglect going to the hospital. You should get your test done. Like Dr. Ruin mentioned, wear your mask, make sure you carry your sanitizer, take all those precautions, and get timely medical help, because, we still have other illnesses that people are dying of. It's not like people are only dying of COVID and not dying of anything else. So it is important to seek that timely medical help. Do tests on time, and follow instructions. I think that is one of the challenges that we are facing today, that people are not willing to follow instructions, not willing to wear the mask, not willing to keep that distance.
Right.
And even when people go for vaccinations, you have to keep that distance, because you can have a person with the infection who comes to take the vaccine. So, these basic precautions are absolutely essential.
Right. So responsibility is on par with masking, and social distancing. Being responsible is also another very important.
That doesn't change even if you get vaccinated, like what Dr. Ruin mentioned. Even if you get vaccinated, you still need to maintain the precautions, because you might not get the infection, or you might go through a mild infection, but you might put other people at risk for the infection, and that other person might be a family member, somebody who's living with you, who might suffer with the infection. So the precautions have to be maintained.
Susanna, right now the parallel conversations happening is along with the disease, everyone's not talking about the vaccination, and with the vaccination, obviously there are many who say, is vaccinating okay? There's so many doubts about it, and actually they're giving instances of where people are dying after vaccines. What are the contradictions or contraindications for the vaccine? So there are a lot of vaccination doubts in people's minds. You want to throw some light on the vaccination question, Susanna?
Yes, sir. So basically, people need to know first that what is a vaccine. So it's like the body's defense mechanism begins to act against a specific virus and boost your immunity. So we need to first know what's vaccine. Then what exactly does it have? It has these weak or killed forms of the virus or the pathogen that are injected and helps our body to develop antibodies or immunity against. Two reasons that we need to get ourselves vaccinated is one to protect ourselves and the other to protect the people around us. Now, vaccine, there are many myths that we shouldn't be giving it in this and that, no, but it's safe and effective in diabetes, in patients who have comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, a, a bypass surgery, patients who are breastfeeding. Then this doubt that if they are pregnant, that can they be taking the vaccine? If needed, like if they are a healthcare worker and pregnant, they would need a vaccine, but if not, they can be avoided. Otherwise, if patients are on any drugs like blood thinners or aspirin or any other things, they can still take the vaccine. The side effects to these vaccines are mild body aches, a local reaction like a redness or swelling at the vaccine site, joint pain, fever, diarrhea. For all these things, they can have a mild they can take paracetamol to prevent it. And one of the side effect being anaphylaxis, the serious adverse effect, which can lead into other serious complications and ultimately death. So this is a very severe and a rare complication. So that doesn't say that you do not take the vaccine. So if you take it, it's better, but if you do not take it, it's worse.
So I'm saying, are there any absolute contraindications where you are not fit to take a vaccine? Any cases where you would say an absolute contraindication?
No, sir, there's no contraindication as such.
So you're advocating that everyone should go and get yourselves vaccinated ASAP whenever you can. Okay.
Yes,
okay. Thank you, Susan. Yeah. Cheryl, another, I would say, a parallel concern in this pandemic has been mental health. Do you see the current scenario impacting mental health even more?
Definitely, Richard. So, and right from the beginning of the pandemic last year, 2020, we've been saying that, the viral pandemic and the mental health pandemic is going, hand in hand. And we sometimes feel that the mental health pandemic is going to, oversee the viral pandemic. And I'll tell you why, because the recent data says that 1 in 7 of Indians will develop a mental health problem uh, in the last 1 year. That means we're 7 of us here. One of us technically could have some mental health issues. I mean, it's that common. That means one of us in our extended family can have a mental health issue. So what we need to understand is it's not just the people who are vulnerable or who already had depression that can develop this problem. We have seen two sets of people, two groups of people during this pandemic. One is people who have never had an issue before. But with the pandemic and life changing, a lot of people are coming up with anxiety because everything is uncertain, right? They're so used to being in control of our environment, of our lives, and now there is something which has come and it's made our world topsy turvy. So there's a lot of uncertainty. We see a lot of people with obsession with cleanliness, so over sanitizing or extreme phobia of the disease. So like Ashish was saying, that you go in and check yourself, as soon as you get your symptoms. But there are a huge number of people who are checking themselves and getting an RT-PCR done every week because they're so scared that even if there is no history of an exposure to getting exposed, so there's increased anxiety. Children who are being homebound, they're seeing a lot of irritability, anger, screen addiction. There's something the young pediatricians are talking about, something known as a virtual autism. So younger kids who have not got exposure with social interaction and the only interaction being screen, we see that they are deteriorating in their developmental milestones. Elderly are experiencing loneliness. Then the other group of people who already had mental health issues. So because of the lockdown, access to healthcare, access to their medications, access to their doctors has become more difficult. So there is a surge in that. So definitely a mental health pandemic is looming over us, and we need to be aware and take drastic steps so we are able to curb it.
I think
Interesting. Yeah, Ashish, go ahead.
I just would like to add to that like Dr. Cheryl was saying, there is a huge stigma linked to COVID, and we have a lot of patients who are too scared to do the test. And at this point, if you are scared to do the test, you're only delaying your own treatment and causing your own problems. So the virus is endemic at this point. It is all around. Everybody's at risk for the virus, and it's time we recognize that the only way to handle this is to recognize that there is a problem and take the necessary precautions. That is not live in fear, but get treated, get diagnosed, and that's the only way forward. Otherwise, we're just harming ourselves in the whole process. Yeah.
Absolutely, the stigma is huge.
Right.
Right? So the people want to just be quiet about it because the neighbors are worried, the BMC comes and puts a board, but they want to avoid that, so they just kind of delay, which is something I think we should kind of address.
Interesting, you use the term also, a mental health crisis. The pandemic of mental health is something which we're going to be seeing soon, and that's something to watch out for. In fact, even the children, I got two boys myself. Children being locked up, indoors for so long, their study patterns, the rhythm of a normal child's is all totally disturbed, and that is something again affecting children at a young age. So we now then come to another question of what if I have had COVID, Dr. Ruin? Is it for you? What if I've had COVID? Then what happens? What happens after the isolation of 14 days at home? How soon can I step out of the house? If I get COVID after taking the first dose of the vaccine, then how soon can I take the second dose? Can domestic help come into the house, after I've had COVID? These are very domestic questions people have, the mothers and the housewives have. So what would your answer to them be, Rohan?
So answering the first part of your question, you asked about home isolation, 14 days is over, and how soon can someone step out of the house? After 14 days of the onset of the illness, that's the fever, the cough, or if you've just done a test where the test has turned positive, 14 days after that, a person would not be infected. But if the person has had significant symptoms, then the minimum gap from the last symptom fading off would be 3 days. After that, the person would not be infected. Whatever virus is there in the body, in the respiratory tract, would just be virus debris, but it would not be capable of infecting someone. So the person could step out of the house, but he must know that he has to continue with the same protection, because he can get a second attack, or he could get infected with the virus without suffering from it, carry it in his nostrils, and then pass it on to somebody else. So he has to continue with the masking and the distancing. The house help could come in after 14 days or 3 days after the last symptom, as I said. And you mentioned about the vaccine, right? So if someone has not taken any vaccine at all, he could take his first dose of the vaccine about a month after he's recovered from his symptoms. That could even be delayed to 3 months, though not preferable, because the COVID illness is supposed to give you antibodies that will protect you for about 3 months. But taken at 1 month would be preferable, so it will be between 1 month and 3 months. And the last part you said is if someone has already taken a first dose and then gets COVID, so when does he take the second dose? So the schedule for the Covaxin and the Covishield are slightly different. Those are two vaccines which are available and which you must know when you've taken the first dose, which one you've received. The second dose of Covaxin is 4 weeks after the first dose, and the second dose of Covishield would be around 6 to 8 weeks after the first dose. So there's a longer gap between the first and second dose for Covishield. Now, if you've taken your first dose and then you get COVID, you'll have to wait for at least 14 days bare minimum. You definitely cannot take it if your due date comes when you're ill. When you're ill, you cannot take the vaccine. You have to wait, recover completely, and 14 days from there would be the earliest that you can take it, but would preferably be delayed for a month. Okay, so it should be 14 days to a month after complete clinical recovery. That means no fever, no cough, everything subsided. 14 days to 2 weeks to 4 weeks after that, you can take your second dose, but not earlier than your recommended dose. So if you take in Covaxin, say on the 10th of April, on the 15th you get an illness, 29th of April is 14 days which are completed from the time of your getting the illness, and then another 14 days will take you to the 13th of May. Your scheduled dose of 8 weeks would come later. So you have to wait for those 8 weeks for your scheduled dose. So it would be your scheduled dose, but not earlier than 14 days to 28 days after clinical recovery.
Okay. Ashish, you want to add something to that?
No, there's nothing more.
Nothing more to add. Okay.
Yeah.
Suzanne, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. So there's this thing that it's come up that Covaxin, there are two, Covishield and Covaxin. So people are saying that Covaxin has a higher efficacy compared to Covishield. So they are thinking that if they've taken the first dose of Covishield, we'll take the second dose of Covaxin, which is wrong. If you've taken Covishield, you take the second dose of Covishield itself. Because if you don't do that, you're going to do an interchange of vaccines, and there'll be a different reaction to it. So if you've taken Covishield, you continue with the second dose of Covishield. If Covaxin, then the second dose of Covaxin.
Great. I think that's a very useful tip you shared, to stick to the same vaccine which you taken the first time. Yes, Ashish, you were saying something?
Dr. Rohan was saying one important thing is not to take the vaccine when you have an active illness. So if you have symptoms which are even remotely connected to COVID, either get an RT-PCR which is negative and then take the vaccine, or wait out and then take the vaccine. Either ways, there are suspicions that a lot of these reactions to the vaccine are because people already have an active disease and then take the vaccine. So, we don't have conclusive data regarding that, but these are just suspicions that we have currently.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Susan, now WHO has come up with the new statement saying that COVID-19 is airborne. So when you say it's airborne, which means it spreads mostly through the air, does that change things? I mean, does that change things like disinfecting surfaces need to be done lesser? ACs should not be used. Do I need to wear a mask even at home with our family members? Does the concept of airborne change things in our behavioral patterns?
So as Dr. Rohan had mentioned about how it's transmitted, that is through droplets, so sneeze and coughing and all. So that means, it doesn't mean that it will spread through air, so you start disinfecting with spraying the air and all. That's even more dangerous, as there are a lot of casualty cases coming with burns because of spraying sterilium and such infected sprays right near where people are cooking. So even though it's airborne, you just need to maintain distance and practice all those SOPs of hand washing and wearing a mask. About wearing mask at home, it's not essential, but just that you need to maintain distance, just to be safe. And about disinfection, whatever regular things that have been used, like normal washing your hands, using a sanitizer, or using alcohol-based solution, it's the best to keep to protect yourself from COVID.
Okay. Ashish, now currently the biggest crisis right now is getting hospital beds. And now on Saturday, if you've seen the papers, BMC's come up with a new norm that the allocation of beds have to be done after a BMC doctor kind of checks you up, and then a bed can be allocated. So basically hospitals are full. So where does one go if you have a COVID-19? And do all municipalities in Mumbai have the same procedure to follow in case one needs a bed? I mean, what does one do in a bed crisis like this? Ashish, your mic is muted.
The first step in that is not to panic. Because once you get that report of COVID, the first thing reaction is to panic and then say, do I need admission, and how will I get a bed if there is no bed? Because the newspapers are just flashing all that. And I think the BMC is doing a very good job. There are websites, there are several helplines which are individual helplines per wards, and those, as far as what my patients have experienced, they've been able to get through. In addition, hospitals have their own helplines, dedicated helplines. I know Holy Family has one, and they have certain number of beds by which they can admit. There is a shortage of bed, but not everybody who gets the infection needs a bed. So primarily, your physician will be able to treat you at home and in his clinic for most of the part. It's only when your oxygen level drops is when you essentially require admission, and that is really how it should go ahead. Last year we had a lot of asymptomatic patients and all getting admitted, and people are still under the impression that if you're asymptomatic, you need to get admitted, which is not true right now. The purpose of doing that last year was to kind of contain the COVID pandemic and to prevent it from taking, getting into community transmission. Unfortunately, we've not been able to do that. So at this point, we're looking to reserve beds for people who actually need oxygen, who actually need urgent care, and who need hospital medical attention, really. So it would be my request not to get admitted just for the sake of getting admitted, even if you have the influence, and reserve beds, because once you get admitted, the hospital can't just throw you out of the hospital and discharge you. We have to take you through the course of the illness, and every life is valuable. But at the same time, if the bed is occupied, if we have patients who are on oxygen, who require oxygen, we have no place and we are helpless. And that same goes for the BMC also. If the beds are occupied, we can't do anything much. You can't throw patients out of the bed and then admit a new patient. So you have to wait for their course of illness to finish and then admit the next patient, which is causing a lot of problems for patients who require oxygen, causing delay in treatment of injections that people require. So when you get diagnosed with COVID, that is the time you need to see a medical professional, a physician who can treat your case, and then decide whether you need admission or don't need admission.
Right. I think you shared something very important, that not everyone needs hospitalization. That's the key. So basically, like we spoke earlier, I think the panelists shared, is we need early detection, monitoring with a physician, over the phone. And once things, certain parameters go downhill, like your pulse ox and all that, then we probably can think of hospitalization.
You need early treatment, but that early treatment can be started at home. It's not always that the treatment is required in the hospital. And you can check your oxygen level at home. You can take on the pickup.
And I think that's the purpose of the BMC intervening, is like the doctor from the BMC kind of screening the patients who really, really need a bed.
Because what happens, if you don't have an oxygen bed, you are letting those people die.
Depriving someone else. You're depriving someone else. Correct.
And it is very unfortunate. It is fear that is driving all this.
Right.
But it's unfortunate for people who can't get access to the oxygen and can't get that bed. Right. So it is important to see to get early treated and early diagnosed and treated, but start the treatment at home.
Right. So you mentioned the word fear, and that brings me to my final question for this session. Is, I think, the most basic mental health manifestation, I would say, is panic and fear. People are going through that panic and fear crisis. So, Cheryl, what would your final advice be? What are the simple do's and don'ts for patients just undergoing that stress in these times?
So I would like to say that, let's look at it as the ABCs of mental health, right? So A is acknowledge your fear, right? I know that it's a scary situation. So acknowledge, but the moment you start becoming aware that I'm panicking and this is not a real well-founded fear, you'll be able to deal with it better. The second is avoid watching a lot of negative news and negative information on social media, because there is so much of negativity and that just feeds on to this fear. The third thing in A is arrange for periodic breaks from social media. So take a break from your social media accounts for some time, because it's just increasing your panic. The B, I would say, is try to be as physically active as you can in the confines of your home. You don't have to step out and go for a run. You can exercise at home. Try to maintain a balance between work and leisure. Everybody is working from home, and somehow there is no demarcation anymore between work life and the sleep, everything. So try to maintain that balance. Try to have a balanced diet. The C would be to connect with family, but virtually. So don't party and meet up, but try to connect with your family and friends, through a virtual Zoom meetings, and you play a housey or you catch up with friends via that. Communicate with empathy to people around us. We always say that during this pandemic, if you start practicing acts of kindness, volunteering, even virtually, it helps in improving your own serotonin secretion and makes you more calmer and better. Practice breathing exercises on a daily basis, because when you do deep breathing, what you're doing is actually calming down your sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is the one who's constantly telling us there is danger, there is danger, there is danger. So if you're practicing deep breathing exercises, you're able to calm it down. And the last C would be connect to a mental health professional. There is no shame and stigma, even if you feel that you're not able to handle your emotions. Remember that all these emotions are stemming in from your brain. It's not something which is in your control if it comes up. So just like you would go to somebody if you fracture your hand, or you would get chest pain, as you said, rush to the hospital. The moment you feel that you're not able to control your mood and your emotions, reach out for help.
Fantastic. So that's a lovely ABC tips to end on a positive note. I think the most important thing I took from that is just stay away from social media, stay away from the news, kind of give yourself a break. And I came across a very interesting WhatsApp. It says, switch away from the headlines and create your own headlines, create your own headlines in appreciating and just being grateful for just being alive for that day. Just connecting with a higher force, that just being alive and trying to reach out to people who really need help at the moment. And I think that's the most important. Just stay away from all the noise, but at the same time, reach out, look out where you can be useful to the person next to who's going through a crisis. I think that's a great way to end this short capsule, if I may call it, because it's really brief, but I'm sure you shared some wonderful points. I want to conclude by telling our viewers that the health outreach, and if you want to reach out to our doctors on this panel, we have initiated a COVID helpline, and I'm going to just share the screen where I'm going to put up details of the COVID helpline, where we have initiated from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. where you can talk to these doctors. We're trying to do our best in trying to connect you with beds and various essential services required. We're trying to resort your mental health issues, and spread this information about this helpline. And if you want to talk to us even further, we have an email ID called healthoutreach2020@gmail.com. That's healthoutreach2020@gmail.com. So on that note, I want to thank all our panelists, Dr. Ruin, Dr. Ashish, Dr. Susan, and Dr. Cheryl for making this possible, and most importantly to our Bishop Alvin for this idea. I think it's an excellent idea in these times to kind of disseminate information out to public who are just kind of thirsting for more information. So thank you all. Bishop, over to you.
So thank you, Dr. Richard. I'm sure the viewers are going to be enlightened. And many of us have certain doubts, but I'm sure that with the sharing of the panelists, we'll be able to dispel our doubts and dispel our fears. And to all the viewers, you are most welcome to contact the people who have volunteered. On the first day itself, there are about each doctor has had, or each contact person has had about more than 30 people. So it is being crowded. So we are trying to reach out to those who need help, and we know that the Lord is with us and He will help us. So thank you very much to all of you, and may God bless you.